Carl, do you think there are moral facts? Like if I say something like murder is wrong, do you think that's a fact? Or is that just like an opinion of mine or an opinion of my culture? Carl, pay attention. What do you mean you're watching videos on ethics? We're doing a video on ethics right now. Oh, you're watching the good ones. You are unbelievable. Wait, let me see that. Damn, that is good. Hey, subscribe to that channel, okay? Hi, and welcome to this video lecture for Catholic Social Learning. Today, we're going to discuss metaethics. As noted in an earlier video, metaethics discusses foundational questions about morality and ethics. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at some of these foundational questions. The plan is to break metaethics down by focusing on the most common metaethical theories. We'll begin with the broader theories and then work our way down to the more specific ones. Once you understand these theories, appreciate their differences, and comprehend what's at stake, you'll be better situated to decide which combination of metaethical theories makes the most sense to you. Let's begin with a basic question. When people make a moral statement, what are they actually expressing? Imagine someone says, murder is wrong. What does that statement actually mean? Here, we'll discuss two basic options, cognitivism and non-cognitivism. Cognitivism is the metaethical position that moral statements express propositional beliefs that are truth-apt. For cognitivists, moral statements like murder is wrong are comparable to statements like that tree is 20 feet tall. Both of these statements express propositional beliefs, which means that both statements are truth-apt. That just means that both statements have a truth value. They're either true or false. The tree is either 20 feet tall, in which case that statement is true, or it's not 20 feet tall, in which case that statement is false. Likewise, murder is either wrong, in which case that statement is true, or it's not wrong, in which case that statement is false. According to cognitivism, when people make moral statements, they're expressing truth-apt propositions concerning what they believe about the world. Non-cognitivism is the metaethical position that moral statements do not express propositional beliefs and are not truth-apt. To make it easier, I'll just focus on two types of non-cognitivism here, emotivism and prescriptivism. Emotivists think that moral statements like murder is wrong are comparable to statements like down with AI or boo to torture. These statements aren't expressions of propositional beliefs. They're expressions of preferences, desires, or emotions that people happen to have. Prescriptivists think that moral statements like murder is wrong are comparable to statements like eat your vegetables or don't kick puppies. These statements aren't propositional beliefs either. They're simply commands that people make on others. And you'll note that none of these statements are truth-apt. Down with AI isn't a true or false statement. Neither is don't kick puppies. As a side note, I want to make it clear that I do not actually approve of kicking puppies. I actually prefer to kick birds, Carl. They're harder to catch than puppies, but when you kick them, they fly away, so it looks like you kicked them really far. As an additional side note, I would like to say that I don't actually kick birds. There, Carl, you happy? Anyway, because non-cognitivists argue that making moral statements like murder is wrong is essentially the same as making statements like down with murder or do not murder, they don't think moral statements are propositional beliefs that can be true or false. According to non-cognitivists, when people make moral statements, they're simply expressing personal preferences, desires, or emotions, or making commands that have nothing to do with truth or falsity. So now we have some idea concerning different metaethical views about what people are expressing when they make moral statements. Let's ask a different question. When people make moral claims, for instance, murder is wrong, do these claims have any objective truth to them? In other words, does morality exist outside of subjective minds? For example, human minds or the mind of God? Or is morality created by subjective minds? Let's ask this question slightly differently. Is murder wrong because the quality of wrongness exists objectively in the world and applies to murder, or at least we think it applies to murder? Or is murder wrong because the quality of wrongness is created by human minds and humans then apply it to murder? In other words, is morality like mathematical principles or the laws of nature that seem to exist independently of human minds and we just discover them? Or is morality like a subjective opinion about which color is the bestest? By the way, Carl, it's shamrock green. Shamrock green. A subjective opinion which is created, and really only exists, in human minds. Again, let's talk about two basic views here, moral realism and moral anti-realism. Moral realism is the metaethical position that morality exists objectively outside of human minds. Humans don't create morality. Therefore, morality isn't a matter of subjective opinion. According to moral realism, the statement murder is wrong either accurately or inaccurately describes an objective fact about the world we live in. It's either true or false. In this sense, all forms of moral realism align with cognitivism, because all forms of moral realism maintain that moral claims express propositional beliefs that are truth-apt. Moral anti-realism is the metaethical position that morality does not exist objectively outside of intelligent minds. In other words, morality originates in or is created by some type of intelligent mind, either human minds or perhaps the mind of God. Therefore, morality is either an expression of the preference of that mind, or those minds, or a matter of the subjective opinion of that mind, or those minds. Now things get a bit tricky here. If they haven't stopped watching already, Carl, I guarantee they're out now. They're thinking now's when it gets tricky? Seriously? Right now? I haven't understood a single word that's been said so far. I'm just joking. You're all smart, intelligent, beautiful people. Forms of moral anti-realism that maintain that moral claims are simply expressions of preferences fall into the category of non-cognitivism. If there's no such thing as a moral truth, but you say murder is wrong simply because you find murder distasteful, which would be an example of... I was trying to go for that Dora the Explorer feel where they stare at the camera creepily and just blink while you try to give the answer. No, didn't come off at all. Just creepy. Got it. Emotivism. Yes, exactly. See, I told you they were smart. Because you're just expressing your personal preference against murder based on emotion. But you're not stating an objective fact about the universe, and your statement isn't truth-apt. But it's also possible to imagine that when people are making moral statements, they are expressing beliefs. These beliefs are truth-apt, which again just means that they're either true or false, but the moral statements are also subjective. For example, if someone believes that every individual is the source of their own morality, you do you, I'll do me, then each person gets to decide what is right for them. We call this view individual subjectivism. Under individual subjectivism, each person expresses a subjective belief that is true or false for them. Likewise, if someone thinks that each culture gets to decide what is moral for that culture, then each culture gets to decide what's right for them. We call this view cultural subjectivism. And again, each culture would be expressing subjective beliefs that can be true or false for those particular cultures. What's interesting about this point is that because we're dealing with beliefs that are truth-apt, both individual subjectivism and cultural subjectivism are examples of cognitivism. However, because both views maintain morality is subjective, originating in human minds, they are also examples of moral anti-realism. So, you can be a cognitive moral realist, which would mean that you think moral statements are propositional beliefs that are truth-apt and refer to objective facts about the world. But you can also be a cognitive moral anti-realist, which would mean that you think moral statements express propositional beliefs that can be true or false, but do not refer to objective facts about the world. They only refer to the subjective opinions of individuals or groups of people. One more theory is worth mentioning here, and that's error theory. Error theory maintains that moral statements express propositional beliefs that are truth-apt, so it's a form of cognitivism. But this theory maintains that the people who make moral claims are mistaken, hence the error, in thinking that their beliefs align with some objective fact about the world, in the same way a scientific theory might. So error theory maintains that every substantive moral statement is automatically false. One fun and easy way to explain error theory is to think about unicorns. That's right, Carl. Unicorns. Because apparently horses weren't good enough. Carl, for the last time, I don't care what you saw. They're not real. If someone makes a claim about unicorns as if they were real, for example, the claim, unicorns are really fast, that statement would automatically be false. It's false because it rests on an assumption that isn't true. Unicorns exist. There are no unicorns, so unicorns can't be really fast. In other words, because unicorns don't exist, every statement about unicorns that assumes unicorns do exist is false. Error theory says the same thing about morality. Because morality doesn't exist as an objective fact about the world, every moral statement that assumes morality does exist in this way is false. So to say that murder is wrong is false, because that statement assumes wrongness is an objective fact about the world, when it isn't. Unicorns. Now, let's say that you're a moral realist, so you believe that morality exists objectively outside of the human mind. We now run into an interesting question. What makes morality moral? When someone says murder is wrong, what do we mean by the property of wrongness, or badness, or goodness, and so on? Again, let's talk about two basic options: naturalism and non-naturalism. Naturalism is the metaethical theory that moral qualities align with natural qualities of the world. For example, pleasure and pain are natural qualities, and someone may argue that something is wrong inasmuch as it causes displeasure or pain. So for this person, murder is wrong because murder causes displeasure or pain. Contrarily, things are good if they cause pleasure. Naturalism has some issues. For example, how do we make the leap from something being natural to something being good? How do we know that just because something is pleasurable, it's good, or just because something is displeasurable, it's bad? And how do we verify that the natural thing we're talking about is actually good? Non-naturalism is the metaethical theory that moral qualities are, you guessed it, non-natural. This simply means that moral terms like good and evil can't be identified with natural qualities like pleasure and pain. In other words, moral terms aren't reducible to natural qualities. In some ways, the best that we can say is good means good, and wrong means wrong. As you might guess, the non-naturalist approach also has issues. For example, saying good means good lacks a certain specificity. The problem of verification also remains. If I say something like murder is wrong, how do I verify that I'm right? The verification issue raises a more general metaethical question. What can we know about morality, and how can we know it? The first thing to talk about here is moral skepticism. This is a broad camp that covers a lot of views, but the basic idea is either doubt or denial that people can have moral knowledge. Let's give a few reasons why. Non-cognitivists would deny that people can have moral knowledge because moral statements aren't truth-apt. And if a statement can't be true or false, how can you know if it's true or false? Error theorists would deny that people can have moral knowledge because all substantive moral statements are false, because moral facts don't actually exist. And if a statement's false, how can someone know it's actually true? In other words, just like someone can't know unicorns are fast, because unicorns don't actually exist, so how can you know that they're fast? Also, someone can't know that murder is wrong, because wrongness doesn't actually exist. One argument that suggests we ought to doubt that people can obtain true moral knowledge is the recognition that different people and different cultures have very different moral viewpoints. In other words, it's a demonstrable fact of the world that people disagree about what is moral and what is immoral. We call this descriptive moral relativism, because it describes the world as having different moral viewpoints relative to different individuals and different cultures. I know, we're wildly creative. But think about it. Throughout human history, practices like child sacrifice, slavery, and genocide have been viewed as morally acceptable by different cultures. And in some cases, they've even been required by certain cultures. Given all the variations that exist, how can we say which version of morality is the true one? This is a reason that people doubt, even if moral realism is accurate, we can arrive at true moral knowledge. But just for funsies, let's assume that murder is wrong in the moral realist sense, and that we can know it. This raises an interesting question. How would we come to know it? In other words, if moral realism is true, how do we come to know moral facts about the world? Some people think that we can come to know what is good and what is right through the exercise of reason. Shout out to my lovers of Immanuel Kant. For these people, rationality and logic can help us discover what true morality looks like. Others think we need to rely on our intuition to discover morality. Shout out to my lovers of G.E. Moore. If we just allow ourselves, we can come to see that moral truths are self-evident. It's just obvious that murder, genocide, and torture are wrong. Still others think that we can learn moral truths from observing nature. As you might guess, none of these answers are without issue. After all, rational people disagree about what's moral. And if morality is so self-evident that we can intuit it, why do so many people come to so many different variations of morality? And to claim that we can derive morality from nature leads back to that question about how we make the leap from what is natural to what is moral. The final metaethical question we'll ask in this video is about the moral act or concept itself. When someone says murder is wrong or justice is good, we have to ask, what is murder? What is justice? Our goal here isn't to answer these questions, but just to note that they can be rather complex. Take murder, for example. What is murder? Is it just killing? Probably not, because most people think it's morally justifiable to kill someone in self-defense. Perhaps murder is just killing the innocent. But what about if you kill someone who is guilty? For example, someone who has threatened or even killed a family member of yours, but has been completely neutralized and is no longer a threat. You're no longer acting in self-defense. So is that murder? And what about if you kill an innocent person who has, for no fault of their own, become an aggressor against you? For example, imagine someone was drugged against their will and they started becoming wildly erratic and violent and started attacking you and your family. And the only way you could protect yourself was with lethal force. In this case, the person is innocent. They didn't choose to take the drugs, but you're also acting in self-defense. The point here is to note that defining terms like murder, justice, or good is an essential meta-ethical component of any moral discussion. In this behemoth of a video, we've discussed metaethics. We've looked at some common metaethical concepts and theories and explored how they relate to one another. But alas, we didn't get to everything. My apologies to divine command theory and my great love, the Euthyphro dilemma. At any rate, I hope you found this introduction helpful. In our next video, we'll be discussing normative ethics. Until then, farewell.